October 19th, 2015. Election night in Canada. After years of frustration with where the country was heading, Canadians showed up in huge numbers to vote. The outcome? Justin Trudeau became the new prime minister, welcomed by a roaring crowd chanting his name. Trudeau promised Canadians one thing above all: a fresh start, a real transformation. Across the nation, people felt inspired. They imagined a country where life became easier, more homes, lower costs, and a brighter future for the next generation. For many, it felt like Canada was about to enter a new era of hope. The Canadian dream felt alive. But fast forward to today, and that dream has dimmed. Home prices have exploded at a pace never seen before. Food banks now turn away families because demand is too overwhelming. Immigrants who once came seeking opportunity are leaving faster than ever. What was once a dream is now a wake-up call. This is the darker reality of Canada. Talk to everyday Canadians and you'll hear a common theme: a deep sense of uncertainty about what lies ahead. Most grew up believing they could own a home, raise a family, and live comfortably in a safe neighborhood. But with today's housing crisis, that belief feels more like an illusion. To buy the average Canadian home, a household needs to make around $170,000 a year. In Vancouver, that number skyrockets to $360,000. Now compare that to the median family income, just $70,000. It becomes painfully clear buying a home in Canada is out of reach for most people. Many Canadians who don't own property have simply given up. They don't see homeownership as even a distant possibility anymore. And even if you can afford a home, you're usually getting far less for far more. Take Vancouver, where a modest aging home can cost nearly $2 million. For the same amount, you could buy a mansion in cities like Austin. But it isn't just buying, renting has also become a battle. Years of underbuilding, NIMBY attitudes, population growth, and endless government red tape have pushed rental supply to historic lows. Across the country, rental vacancy sits at an unbelievable 1.5%. People aren't looking for apartments anymore. They're competing for them. One rental listing can get hundreds of applicants. Renters are exhausted. It's reaching a point where Canadians must choose. Do they pay rent or do they eat? Do they keep the lights on or keep a roof over their head? Doing both is becoming impossible. Low vacancy means landlords know renters have nowhere else to go, and so rents rise again and again. One renter even reported their landlord raising rent by $700 a month. Today, a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto or Vancouver can easily cost $3,000. After paying taxes and rent, most people have almost nothing left. Some skip meals, some work multiple jobs, some live in cars. Many rely on debt just to survive. So much so that Canada now has the third highest household debt to GDP ratio in the world. Yet the government seems unable or unwilling to help. Some even argue that the government is making things worse.
The crisis in housing isn't the result of a single decision. It's years of federal and local policies stacking on top of each other, mixed with decades of inaction. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has presided over the fastest rise in Canadian real estate prices in the nation's history. A major driver behind this surge has been immigration policy. Since 2016, Canada has welcomed nearly 3 million new immigrants, the highest intake in modern Canadian history, and roughly 40% more per year than in earlier decades. On top of that, over 1 million international students are currently in the country. By increasing the population so rapidly while not increasing housing supply at the same pace, the government unintentionally created enormous pressure on an already stretched market. It's simple economics. When demand jumps and supply doesn't, prices soar. Most newcomers enter the market looking for starter homes or basic rentals, the exact same properties young Canadians are struggling to secure. This creates fierce competition at the bottom of the market. Look at UBC, for example. Students can no longer find affordable housing. Many wait over a year to get a dorm room. Some even live in vans parked near campus because it's cheaper than rent. One student said it was cheaper to fly in from another city every day than to pay for housing in Vancouver. But immigration alone isn't the root cause. Canada has been underbuilding for decades. According to CIBC, the country needs 5 million new homes by 2030 just to restore affordability, and developers admit this is impossible under current conditions. Building more homes isn't as simple as flipping a switch. Local governments often push back against new developments because homeowners fear their property values will drop. This NIMBY mindset, combined with long permitting processes, stalls projects for years. Politicians know this, so they avoid pushing for housing reforms, because upsetting homeowners means losing votes. Taxes and permits also add massive costs. In some cities, government fees can tack on over 20% to the cost of a new home, and that gets passed directly to buyers. Meanwhile, government bureaucracy keeps ballooning. Between 2020 and 2023, the BC government expanded by 23%. The private sector grew just 1%. More government workers means more tax revenue is needed, driving costs up across the board. Then there's foreign money. Canada has become a global hotspot for investors, and unfortunately for money laundering. A major government-commissioned report found that huge amounts of illegal money were flooding into real estate, especially in Vancouver and Toronto. Yet meaningful action hasn't been taken. Money laundering remains shockingly easy, and it continues to inflate home prices. But housing is only one part of Canada's affordability nightmare. Food prices have jumped by over 10% since 2022. Nearly 2 million Canadians visited food banks in March 2023, the highest number ever, and double the 2019 figure. A major issue is the lack of competition. Just a few companies control roughly 80% of the grocery market. This allows them to charge higher prices with little pushback. The bread market? Dominated by only two major players, and government policies haven't helped. By protecting supply-managed industries like poultry, eggs, and dairy, the government effectively forces families to pay more. This protection alone costs the average household about $450 extra per year, money many families desperately need. Then there's the carbon tax. The government claims it lowers emissions and puts money back into Canadians' pockets, but citizens across the country disagree. Gas and heating bills are higher than ever. Canadians now spend more on fuel than any other G7 nation. Anger peaked in the Atlantic provinces, where residents rely heavily on fuel oil. As prices became unbearable, even Liberal MPs pushed back. The government eventually paused the tax in that region to avoid a political disaster. The narrative that most Canadians get more back in rebates has been questioned too. The parliamentary budget officer clarified that once you factor in economic effects, most families end up worse off, not better. And it's not just fuel. Government policies, or lack thereof, have made everything costlier. Telecom bills in Canada are among the highest in the world. Canadians pay 7 times more than Australians and hundreds of times more than citizens in places like Finland. Despite this, when Rogers moved to acquire Shaw, a potential competitor, the government allowed it. In many countries, such a merger would have been stopped. Banking follows the same pattern. Starting a new bank is nearly impossible due to regulations that favor major institutions. So Canadians pay some of the highest banking fees in the developed world, an extra $250 per year compared to places like the UK and Australia. This lack of competition is a recurring theme, and Canadians pay the price.
Canada's high cost of living could be eased if the economy were growing faster, especially in industries that create high-paying jobs. But in recent years, the trend has moved in the opposite direction. Since 2019, Canada's economic productivity has dropped, while the United States has seen a 6% increase. This decline directly affects wages, opportunity, and overall quality of life. When productivity falls, everything becomes more expensive, and people feel it immediately. A key reason behind this decline is weak private sector investment. Canadian companies are pouring more money into ventures outside Canada than within it. Why? Because they believe the returns and the business environment are better elsewhere. Confidence in the current system has eroded. Many businesses no longer view Canada as a place where it's easy to operate, innovate, or scale. Another major issue is market concentration. Across many industries, a few dominant players control everything. When companies don't face real competition, they have little motivation to innovate or invest. The US, in contrast, has lower concentration across sectors, which forces companies to constantly grow, adapt, and reinvent themselves. Government intervention also plays a role. The energy sector, for example, has seen significant decline. Federal policies and pricing mechanisms have discouraged investment. Since 2014, investment in oil and gas has dropped by nearly $60 billion per year. Some argue that Canada should move away from fossil fuels anyway. Fair enough. But even in future-focused sectors like technology, growth has been disappointing. Since 2016, the GDP contribution of tech companies has only grown at the rate of inflation, meaning real growth is essentially zero. Government incentives designed to boost industrial activity haven't produced the results Canadians were promised. Meanwhile, talented Canadians and new startups are leaving the country altogether. Every year, about 7% of Canadians move to the U.S. in search of better opportunities. Higher wages, lower costs, and a more dynamic job market make the decision obvious. And when this happens, Canada loses twice. First, the workers who leave take their skills with them. Second, the economy becomes even less competitive, which pushes more people to leave. As productivity falls and investment stalls, the central bank has less room to keep interest rates low. Higher rates make mortgages, loans, and day-to-day living even harder. The picture for now is bleak. Canadians are working harder, earning less, and paying more. And without significant changes, politically, economically, and structurally, life in Canada will continue to get tougher for ordinary people. Still, there's hope that the country can course correct. Canada has enormous potential, world-class talent, and vast natural resources. But unlocking that potential requires major changes in how the government operates, how businesses are supported, and how the country plans for the future. For now, Canadians can only hope that real change arrives sooner rather than later.